So thanks everyone for joining. Research Impact. We're going to talk about Research Impact Canada, but in the second half of this, in the first half, I'm going to talk really about knowledge mobilization and where we are and what we do, and why it's important, just to get us all on the same page. And I'll pass the conversation or the presentation over to my colleague Bissy. You're all here because we're talking about knowledge mobilization, and University of Regina joined the National Research Impact Canada Network. Gosh, when, Juliana? A couple of years ago? No.
At least a year.
Yeah. It was actually Sally Gray when she was she your predecessor?
Yes.
Yeah, so it actually goes back quite a way. So thank you very much for coming. Next slide, please, Stacy. So my name is David. My pronouns are he, him, and him. I was born in England to white parents, and we moved to these lands that some people call Canada when I was 2 years old. I live with my husband in Toronto, and that's on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the current treaty holders are the Mississaugas of the Credit. I am the Assistant Vice President for Research Strategy and Impact at York University. That means I'm run the research office and the administrative lead for all the research programs at the university, but I'm also the network director for Research Impact Canada, which is a network of 34, 35 research organizations, all building institutional capacity for knowledge mobilization. We're going to talk about what that is and the benefits that you as researchers at the researchers, students, and staff at the University of Regina can get, how you can get benefits from the membership in the network. Bissy, could you introduce yourself, please?
For sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Bissy Wario. I'm currently the Acting Director of Operations here at RIC. Did some work on our Future Skills Center Portfolio Committee of Practice and also supporting with the Research Impact Canada Network. I'm really excited whenever I get to meet people from different parts of the country. So happy to be here and share this space with you all.
Great. Thanks, Bissy. Next slide, please, Stacy.
Oh, I'm wrong way.
Oh,
Sorry.
the other next slide.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's Friday.
It's Friday. I'm 2 hours closer to my weekend than you are.
No.
So just to get us on the same page as to what type of impacts we're talking about, generally research is conducted within academia. It could be a university, college, or a research hospital. And then if we mobilize those results or the evidence, that's the top arrow, we get that evidence out into community, into industry, into policy, where the impacts are felt. So the research is done in academia, but the impacts are felt in broader society. But that's not all. If we then listen to do the bottom arrow, we listen to community organizations, and I'm going to talk about Homeless Hub and Away Home Canada in a bit. If we listen to those organizations, we can inform the research that we do in the university. So knowledge mobilization is not just about disseminating out, but it's listening in to our research. And this is a diagram by my colleague Julie Bailey at the University of Lincoln. And she says that impact are the provable effects, we hope beneficial, of research in the real world. Now, another colleague in the Netherlands, Stefan de Jong, he asked ChatGPT to define the societal impacts of research, and ChatGPT came back with 4 paragraphs that were good, they were comprehensive, but Julie uses 9 words. And so while ChatGPT might be effective, it is not elegant in the way that Julie is. Next slide, please.
Sorry, my computer's been weird today.
That's okay. Gives me a chance to take a breath. So generally, the impact that we're looking for is change. And again, hopefully positive. We either want to make more things happen. We want more efficiency, more effectiveness, more access, more profit, or we want to reduce things like mortality, risk, or staff turnover or stress. So things can be improved if you have more of them. They can also be improved if you have less of them. And it also can be improved if you stop doing something. But what we're not talking about is dissemination, academic interest, reputation, citations. Those types of impacts, the scholarly impacts, are really important especially to us in the universities, but those aren't the types of impacts we're talking about today. We're talking about impacts on the broader society. Next slide. Oh, and any time in this, just please unmute yourself and say, hey, David, because I won't be able to see all of you. So either put a question in the chat and I'll ask Stacy to monitor that, or just unmute and say, hey, David, I've got a question. That would be totally fine. So again, coming back to Homeless Hub and Away Home Canada, this is illustrated by an example from York University. The Canadian Observatory on Homelessness is run by Professor Stephen Gates in the Faculty of Education. He's had 2 SHIRP partnership grants. He's had a network of centers of excellence. He's had a lot of federal and provincial money. And so he's done the research in the observatory. The Homeless Hub is an online repository of research summaries or summaries of research, both academic and gray literature and policy work. And those are all made accessible in the Homeless Hub. And Away Home Canada is the national partner that he works with. It's a national nonprofit implementing housing first solutions for youth across Canada. So the knowledge mobilization or getting it out is done through Homeless Hub. The listening is done through with Away Home Canada. And you can see on the top right, the impact are felt by youth who have either had improved housing, returned to school, become employed, have better family connections. So this is an example of where society, where homelessness research has been able to benefit individual homeless youth. But on the next slide, Stacy, just 3 examples which are different. That was more of a social service example. A product example from the University of Saskatchewan talks about a professor there worked with Agriculture Canada and local farmers. He was worked to increase his research, increase the yield of pulse crops, peas and lentils. And that's now made Saskatchewan the world's leading exporter of chickpeas and lentils, export market of 4.2 billion. This wasn't patented. It wasn't, he didn't do it and just didn't do this work and then just send it over to the farmers. He's in the fields, the farmers are in the lab working with him. And so this is an example of where a product has been developed because of the university was collaborating externally. Here's an example from Université de Montréal about a practice. This is a veterinary practice, and based on cows with mastitis. If this veterinary practice was picked up all the mastitis in Canada, then there'd be a potential $733 million impact to the cattle industry. And then finally, a policy solution from Wilfrid Laurier University Carleton and University of Guelph, where they collaborated with local food agencies and they did a report that was taken up by the Ontario government and used to inform Bill 36, the Local Food Act, that is now allowing Ontario to invest in food security initiatives. So just examples of social services, public policy, professional practice, or business products that are not mediated through commercial pathways to impact. There might be a commercial benefit, but these were not patented. They were not licensed. No company was started up around these. And so it's just showing how all of our research on our universities can have a benefit to society mediated through knowledge mobilization, which are those pathways to impact that aren't commercialization. Next slide, please, Stacy. This is a chat chance for our participants to keep the slide up. In the chat, type in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or a 10. Have you ever posted your research on social media? If you have, put a 1 in the chat. If you collaborated with a non-academic partner, it could be Indigenous community, a faith group, it could be industry or local or federal government. Have you published with a non-academic partner? If you have, put a 3 in the chat. Have you spoken about your research to a non-academic audience, including the public? Have you talked to the public about your research? Put a 4. Have you contributed to media release? You'd be a 5. Have you spoken to media on TV, radio, and newspaper, or TikTok? Well, that would be social media. That's a 6. Have you served on a committee because of your expertise? I saw Bissy laughing at me. Excellent, because David doesn't know what TikTok is. I really don't. And have you served on a committee? You're a 7. Have you sat on a panel related to your expertise, but not an academic audience for a public or community or government audience? Arts-based dissemination. If you've ever done theater or comics or poetry or dance or music related to disseminating your research, give yourself a 9. And 10, anything else? So put that in the chat now. We're going to leave it up. We're going to open the chat. Where's my chat? Here we go. See what you've got. Sarah's done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Amazing, Sarah. You're very active and engaging externally. And I would take a sip of my glass of water, but it's empty and I have a cat on my lap, so I'm not going to go do that. Jinkai, thank you. All but 9 and maybe 10. Bissy's done 1, 4, or 9. Thanks, Bissy. We'll just give it another couple of seconds. In your head, you should be hearing the Jeopardy theme song right now. Okay, well, anyone is else. So, Sarah, could I ask you to unmute and just, so you posted on social media, you collaborated with a non-academic partner, you've published with a non-academic partner, you've spoken to a non-academic audience, you've contributed to media, and you've spoken to media. That's amazing. Sarah, could you unmute and just tell a story of any one of those?
Well, I collaborated with a clinical association or group in Toronto, actually, when I was in graduate school. CDI, the Child Development Institute,
Okay.
collaborated with them to work with a clinical population of children. So I did talks with them, did data collection with them, and yeah, lots of collaborations, and we published together.
Oh, nice. You published together. And did you, because you did number 4, then did you take that research back to the kids and the families that you were working with at the Development Institute?
Yep, and the research also directly informed the program that they put on at CDI to help further develop their program.
Well, congratulations. Thanks for sharing that. And Jinkai, can I invite you to unmute and tell a story about what you've done from 1 to number 8? Jinkai, if you can unmute. Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Do you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. So you mean all examples for each?
No, just you choose one to choose one example and tell us your story.
Yeah, because my research is really related to life, right? Because I'm dealing with water and wastewater treatment. So water safety, for example, 2 years ago, I was invited to join non-profit organization in Saskatchewan. It's a Northern Saskatchewan Food Security Coalition, and they had this event. So I was invited to share with them regarding, how to make water safe and eventually make the food safe, and had a very good communication with the leaders in Northern Saskatchewan on food safety.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much, for Sarah and Jinkai. Bissy, we'll come back to you later, but thank you for 1, 4. And I do, so Bissy's put 9 in the chat, and that's arts-based dissemination. I'm a big fan of that, but I don't see it very often. So if we have time towards the end, I'll ask Bissy to remind me to ask her to talk about the arts-based work that she's done. If I can have the next slide, please. Thanks, Stacy. So this is just all the things that you've talked about, that you're already doing this. This is not one more thing that the university is asking you to do. This is stuff that you're already doing. And when we do these things, we close the gap, or between academics and non-academics, or we bridge the gap between academics and non-academics. So congratulations that you're already doing this. And we're going to be talking about how by participating in Research Impact Canada, that we can help you do this work and do more of it, and do it where areas of interest. So Stacy, next slide, please. So a bit of theory going into a bit of practice, because it's good to understand how and why we're doing this work. Next slide, please. So in 2013, SSHRC asked me to be part of a committee that was they put together to evaluate their knowledge mobilization funding programs. And the evaluators said, oh, David, the models are so complex. They've got double-headed arrows, the ends connected to the beginning, and circles are spinning. And if we can't, it doesn't start and it doesn't stop, how do we evaluate it? Could you help us out? So I drew this uncomplicated diagram that says generally those of us in campus areas sit in different spaces than those in air quotes community. I say air quotes because it could be community, nonprofit, it might be an industry partner, or an industry setting, might be a policy setting, municipal, provincial, federal settings. We tend to sit in different spaces, and knowledge mobilization is just things we do to bring us into that shared space of that shared space. And that red arrow is the shared space. It might be a shared space of knowledge transfer where I have something and I give it to you. It might be a space of knowledge translation where I have something and I turn it into a format and make it more accessible to you. It might be a space of knowledge exchange where I've got something, you've got something, we give it back and forth, but we're really not working together. But it might also be a space of collaboration or co-production where we're working on things that are meaningful for both the campus and the community partners. And sometimes when we create this red arrow, then impact occurs. And knowledge mobilization, then my definition is it helps make research useful to society by supporting engaged scholarship from inception to impact. So knowledge mobilization does what? Helps make what research useful to whom? To society. How? By supporting engaged scholarship. That's that red arrow. When? From inception to impact. So next slide, Stacy. So if we understand that knowledge mobilization is things that we do and impact is what we want to have happen, then we have this relationship between how something happens and what something happens. I don't know if there's any evaluators in the room, but you will, your little evaluator hearts will be chuffed to know that impact is the dependent variable and knowledge mobilization is the independent variable. So it's interventions we make to observe an effect on the dependent variable. And so impact and societal impact and knowledge mobilization are not synonymous, but they're closely related, with one being a how and one being a what. So if you've ever written a SHRC grant, back in the day, and I don't know if they still do it, they used to have your knowledge mobilization strategy and your outcome statement. And our researchers would often start with their knowledge mobilization strategy, and I say, which is the how. I say, no, start with the what. What's the change you want to see? And then back it up and then determine how you're going to get there. Juliana, I have a whole other presentation on planning, impact, and grant applications. So we could do that, accompanying tools as well. And we've even published on that. So, and Stacy, if we could please. So the logic between how and what, if we put a logic model, which is the link chain, the logic chain between things that we do, the activity, the outputs that those activities have, the outcomes, and then the impacts. And sometimes we say short-term and long-term impacts. If we use language under this, we co-produce research. That activity is that research is disseminated. It gets out there. When it's out there, somebody takes it up. And if it's any good, they're going to implement it. They're going to use it and implement that into policies, practices, and services. And those are what actually is going to have an impact on the lives of end users. So remember, remember that logic. Remember going back a couple slides that I said, the SHRC evaluators said, if everything's got double-headed arrows and the front's be connected to the back, well, on the next slide, you will see my co-produced pathway to impact that has double-headed arrows, things that spin, the back is connected to the front. And because it is a complex system, the co-produced pathway to impact, look at the words in the middle first: research, dissemination, uptake, implementation, and impact. So this logic that was drawn from the earlier uncomplicated model says that there's a space where academic researchers can do their thing. There's a space where our co-production partners can do their thing, but we can co-produce along the way for most of it, except the impact. I'll come to that. And then it's underpinned by stakeholder engagement, where we're listening to and talking with partners all throughout this process. Now, there is this moment of uptake, which I'll come to, but the impact is a function of the partner space and not the researcher space. And they go, what? Because I say to my researchers, love them, you're not the ones that are making the impact. And because industry makes products, you don't. Government develops policy, you don't. And community delivers social services, you don't. And so if we want our research to ultimately have an impact on the lives of end users, then we do that by collaborating along the way so that we can listen to the needs, we can do research that is meaningful to them, we can disseminate into academic and non-academic forums, and we can facilitate the uptake of that evidence in the context of its use. But the use of it in implementation and in impact is really a function of what they're doing with it. So we have this really important moment between dissemination and uptake. And in this space, a lot of us talk about how do we bring the end user upstream to inform the research process? Very important. I also say, How do we bring the researcher downstream beyond the traditional researcher moment of dissemination? And we've already heard some examples of this, like Sarah and Jinkai both talked about how they were going, not just here's my paper, but they were going into the context of its use. Jinkai went to northern Saskatchewan, spoke to the Food Security Organization, and he facilitated the uptake of evidence in the context of its use. I'm going to ask you to write that down. Facilitate the uptake of evidence in the context of its use. Bissy, could you put that in the chat, please, just so people can see it? And this comes from a paradigm that says if you want your research to be used, you pay attention to three things. The evidence itself, has it been judged by as excellent by international standards or whatever is the norm in your field? The evidence, the use of that. So the context of its use, because how industry uses evidence is different than how a faith group will use evidence. And then the facilitation, how I facilitate with industry is different than how I facilitate with a faith group. So you want to facilitate the uptake of evidence in the context of its use. And we've seen Sarah do that, and we've seen Jinkai do that. Sorry, Bissy, did you have a question? No, you're good? Thank you. So that's an important moment. Facilitate the uptake of evidence in the context of its use. Thank you, Bissy. So next slide, please. And again, just yell out if you've got a question. Here's an example of work that we did illustrating this pathway with Kids Brain Health Network, a network working on childhood neurodevelopmental disorders. And one thing that we did when I led the KT core facility for the network is we did a national priority setting needs assessment and priority setting exercise, and identified that the #1 need expressed by we did educators, self-advocates, parents, clinicians, policymakers. The #1 need identified was specialized training for educators. My kids are in the classroom and they need specialized help in the classroom. So with the Bloorview Kids Rehab, some researchers working with early childhood education practitioners and the Ministry of Child and Youth Services developed this program called Social ABCs. And it's a program that can be that was administered first with early childhood education practitioners, but they recognized the opportunity to be able to help parents develop this program at home. And so one of the knowledge translation things that we did was we turned the early childhood education manual into a parent manual. And they also did their peer review publications. They presented not just at academic conferences, but at family events. The uptake was helping early childhood educators train the parents who implemented this in education settings, but also at home. And when you get these slides, click on this link. It's a global news story about Alex, who is a kid who at 6 years old is making eye contact and he's chatty, but at 12 months old, he was nonverbal. And he was showing delays. And he, through this program, he was creating emotional connections to people. He was making eye contact, started talking. And his mom has this line in the news story. He said, "I love you," for the first time when he was taking social ABCs. And so it's an impact of one kid, but it's an example of this program being now expanded at least to Calgary and Hamilton. I don't know where else it has been since then. So just showing how by understanding stakeholder needs and co-producing research, you can get to wonderful stories like Alex. So next slide, please. So how did we come to be doing knowledge mobilization? That's me on the right. And my background is in commercialization and technology transfer. Worked at the University of Toronto Innovations Foundation in the 90s and ended up at York. Had a couple of other jobs, ended up at York in 2003. And York, as you may know, but especially in 2003, our roots are in social justice and liberal arts. We're now fully diversified through all disciplines. But I get to York at 2003, and we have all of this bench strength of research relevant to public policy, social services, and professional practice. And we did nothing to broker that research. And yet we had a tiny little bit of engineering and a whole person to do tech transfer. So, and again, the guy in the middle, Stan Shapson, VP research at the time, is an educational psychologist. His research was in the classroom, looking to get better learning outcomes for kids. And he always used to say, research needs to leave the university to make a difference. So you had our program mix, his leadership, my capacity in research partnering, and we got some money with the University of Victoria, and we started a knowledge mobilization unit in 2006. And so that's how, Michael Johnny was the first hire. He is still with us as the manager of knowledge mobilization. Krista Jensen is the senior knowledge mobilization specialist, and she joined us in 2007. So I've been so privileged to work with staff who have such expertise and long-standing experience. Next slide, please. So this is what we do. This is York University. This is not yet Research Impact Canada. We connect researchers and partners through just events in our social media. By connecting people, we look to form partnerships. So we broker relationships and projects. Because I run the grants office, then we can find some funding for those partners to get them collaborating. And when this happens, we hope that some of this impact will occur. And we've got stories that I'm not going to share with you because we've already shared some of the stories up above from other universities. But I said 2 full-time staff, couple of student assistants. It's a small office, but small but mighty, making a big impact. Sorry, Stacy, next slide, please. Here's some of the things that we count as the knowledge mobilization unit, the number of brokered projects. We're anywhere between 20 and 35 projects a year. We're the place that if you ever want to talk to a researcher, please don't cold call my researchers because they're never going to call you back. Or you're going to, or they're going to get the ones that if they call you back, it's that researcher who should never talk in public. So stay in your lab and keep doing amazing research. So please call us because we try and find the right partner for you. And we've engaged a lot of faculty and partners and students. We support funding applications. So the large scale grant applications like SURE partnership grants, so Canada Research Chairs, we are at the table supporting those applications with impact strategies. And we do a lot of events and we either support or lead events. Next slide, please. So going from local to national, this is where we're going to pivot into Bissy, and I'm going to ask her to speak about Research Impact Canada. But the first 2 universities to come together in this was York and UVic. And the process was, if we can combine on the left-hand side research talent with partners and stakeholders from industry, government, civil society, or public, then that's the knowledge mobilization that will hopefully inform economic growth, environmental sustainability, social inclusion, new business models. And new business models is really important because 70% of Canada's GDP is in the service sector. And 3/4 of Canadians are employed in the service sector. Service sector. This includes finance and all the big banks, the big 5 consulting organizations, but also not manufacturing. When I say the service sector, there is a huge opportunity for us to be able to inform policy decisions in industry without going through commercialization. For example, if a bank wants to develop a human resource policy that to keep people with disabilities in the workplace longer, then that's not anything you're going to patent. But you can mobilize the knowledge of our business faculty, our critical disabilities faculty, or our HR faculty. So we are interested in some of these new business models as well. And so York and UVic, we came together with some funding in the early 2000s because we are both in provincial capitals. So we had the opportunity to have policy influence. Neither of us had medical school, so we had kind of similar profiles to our research capacity. And we're nowhere near each other. We always wanted the idea that research performed at York could inform decisions in Victoria. That's a nut we have not yet cracked. But we had 3.5 years of money. We worked together with no small amount of hubris. We called ourselves Research Impact Canada. And I'll then hand it over. I'll pause if anyone's got questions. Because my water glass is empty. The cat is off my lap. Bissy's going to take you forward. I'm going to go grab a glass of water while Bissy talks to you about Research Impact Canada.
Thank you. Next slide, please. We've talking a lot about, the practice of creating value and impact from knowledge and research. So Research Impact Canada kind of acts as a community of practice, bringing together different universities and organizations, such as community-based organizations, research institutes and hospitals, foundations. And we operate as a pan-Canadian bilingual network of, I think now, well over 30 different folks or institutions. So we're really focused on organizational capacity building through knowledge mobilization, sharing best practices, co-developing resources and delivering trainings, sometimes even having meetings like this, and also providing a lot of institutional support through awards and funding. So for example, we have graduate student awards. Graduate students at participating research impact Canada organizations can apply for funding for their research. And we recently launched a professional award. So for KMB staff who are, doing great work in the areas of knowledge mobilization. So trying to recognize and provide capacity building and funding to those folks. Next slide, please. So what we do, how we do it. So we build institutional support. Again, one of the ways could be through funding, through encouraging and brokering partnerships and collaborations between different researchers or community organizations and groups. We help researchers and partners demonstrate the impact of their research excellence. And again, we facilitated community practice, which is really members from all of these institutions who are here with us at Research Impact Canada. We do exciting things. So for example, earlier this week, myself and other researchers in the network were invited to the Ontario Science Centre to provide support and expertise around STEM equity. So making science, technology, and math and engineering more accessible to youth, specifically K-9 to 12. So really just looking at how we as researchers can kind of go out in the community and provide capacity building and different things. Next slide. We also have a lot of resources. So this is a screenshot from our website, which is available in both English and French. So we have a repository of resources that is really intended to support any and all knowledge mobilization activities, really figuring out how to do knowledge mobilization. Next slide. And some of the examples of things that we have really starts at the kind of basic introduction to knowledge mobilization. We call it KMB 101. This is a self-paced module, really takes you through the kind of the basics of knowledge mobilization. I think David did a really great job today, but it's always helpful to kind of go back to that. We have modules or tools on how to use data for data-driven decision-making, how to then take those numbers and humanize it and develop stories for impact, how to navigate partnerships. We have tools on that, accessible inclusive event planning for knowledge mobilization. So really kind of taking you through what it is, how to do it effectively, and in many cases, how to do it for the purpose of not only public good, but showing communities why they should be more invested in your research. Next slide. We also have a really great capacity building course called Mobilize You. So this is an 8-week knowledge mobilization course that's really for professionals, researchers, faculty, graduate student, postdoctoral fellows, and also open to the community as well. Really, the focus here is how to mobilize research. So there's a lot of theory, there's practical elements of effective knowledge mobilization. We are open to folks from any and all disciplines, so we make sure that we cater as best we can. We also have been given opportunities to take this Mobilize You course and customize it. So depending on the needs, we can customize the course. This year, actually, I think has been great. We had really, really great turnout, over 300 participants from across 42 different institutions that have joined us. And for Research Impact Canada folks, I believe it's free. And then there are small fees for community partners, and then fees for folks that are kind of outside of the network. And if David is back, I will be sharing sorry.
I think David's back.
There was a slide with some questions, but maybe it was different.
Yep. If you could go forward.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
There. Wait, no, we're going backwards. That's what Mobilize You is. That's a blank slide. Could you go to the next one? I've sent you blank slides, Stacy.
I will put it in the chat.
Yeah, thanks. For some reason, the slides that I sent to Tracy don't have the last few slides in there. Sorry about that, Tracy. If you could just unshare the slides. Thank you very much. I'll make sure, Stacy, that I send you the right deck next, and you can share that with everyone else. But what it had all the slides except the very last slide. And Bissy, did you say you're going to copy the
I'm
questions?
trying to put it in the chat, but I'll read it out loud. So Regina has needs assessment. We're looking to prioritize capacity building activities around sharing specific tools. So I think it was more of a what's next type of slide.
Yeah. This is what next. It's weird because the slides I have. Oh, I can't put something paste. Oh, it's not coming in the chat. So, okay, so what is next? This is Research Impact Canada. University of Regina is a member. We are here to meet your needs. And so we can do bespoke training. I mentioned that I could come in, I could do a training webinar on planning your impact strategies in your grant applications. We've got institutional tools to assess your readiness for impact. So what do you really need to do? So I'm asking Juliana to really over time, do a needs assessment, figure out what you need, because then it's our job to work with you to meet those needs. What are your, how do you prioritize the capacity building activities? We can share specific tools. Bissy read through some of those, and we can co-develop these learning opportunities with the university. But here's the big thing, because University of Regina is a member of Research Impact Canada, we are going to be running Mobilize U for the summer 2024 cohort, and all Research Impact Canada members can send up to 15 participants to Mobilize U. And so the real opportunity, we haven't launched the dates yet, and the dates soon. Oh, you got those. How did you get the slides back up, Stacy?
I just took it out of presentation view and it works. So I don't know why.
There you go. Okay.
I'll
So
just leave it alone.
it's Friday afternoon, and the PowerPoint wants to go for a drink.
Yeah.
So, so really the opportunity, Juliana is and Stacy, is to take this back, do some needs assessment, think about what you need, and then come back to Bissy and me so we can actually do some programming to meet your needs. But also do think about who might want to attend Mobilize U. As Bissy said, it could be a faculty member, could be professional staff, it could be graduate students. And we've even done Mobilize U for United Way member agencies. So it could even be some of your community partners that you're collaborating with. So that would be my ask, Juliana, is to do a needs assessment and then think about what 15 might want to do this summer Mobilize U program. It's an online 8-week module, 8 modules over 8 weeks, self-directed learning, but then each week there's an in-person Zoom call where you get to reinforce some of the learning that that you've had for that module. So thank you. You can unshare, Stacy, come back to the room, and happy to answer any questions that you have. Juliana, what are you thinking?
You were that good that there are no questions. You
You
covered it all.
You did. And I got my glass of water. It is not a gin and tonic. It's a glass of water.
Sure. Okay. No, that was really a great overview of all of what you do and what knowledge mobilization is. There still are people out there in the community who don't have a real good understanding of what knowledge mobilization is. So I think we have some work to do as far as awareness. And so yes, next steps, we will be doing a needs assessment and sort of trying to understand what the community currently knows and what they would like to know. And certainly the Mobilize U is one way of educating people, but also if we can plan some more focused or targeted sessions and tools.
Absolutely. I've just put in the chat. This is the module, the Research Impact Canada module on Introduction to Knowledge Mobilization. Bissy, I know I've seen it, but I haven't actually taken it. I think it takes about an hour to work through. Is that correct?
It's not it's not a super long module. I think if you're sitting and taking notes, it might take you a little bit longer, but it's fairly easy to go through within an hour.
And it says sort of click through, answer some questions, make sure you've got them right, go back if you got it wrong. And so it is self-directed learning. If people are interested in just demystifying knowledge mobilization, that would be an excellent tool.
And I really think there would be value in the planning impact strategies for grant applications session.
Yeah, that's
It's
great
it's
for-
a challenging session for grant writers.
Yeah, for grant writers, for professional, for research admin staff, for faculty members, right? And especially also if you've got research centers that have staff coordinators, something like that, that would be the audience, really, is anyone who is supporting, because most of our grant applications have some form of knowledge mobilization, knowledge translation strategy required.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, happy to do that. I mean, we might want to put suggest that. I mean, if for the fall applications, we really should do something like that in May before people scoot off for the summer.
Exactly. So we still have a bit of time to get our ducks in a row.
Exactly. But happy to do that at any time.
Wonderful.
I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank Jinkai and Sarah for shouting out their amazing projects and illustrating how you did what. Bissy, facilitate the uptake of evidence in the context of its use. Thank you to the two of you. And thank you to everyone else. Thank you, Juliana, for the invitation.